President Duterte opposing military drills in the West Philippine Sea. He will, however, work on expediting the code of conduct in the disputed waters as China wants the rulebook finished in 3 years. Bim Santos joins us live from Singapore. Bim?
Yes, Robbie, President Rodrigo Duterte earlier today has assumed the role as coordinator in ASEAN-China relations during the 33rd ASEAN Summit here in Singapore. He is taking over the role at a time when the regional bloc is still hammering out the details of the Code of Conduct, or COC, over the South China Sea. The much-awaited Code of Conduct in the South China Sea will serve as a framework governing rules of engagement over the disputed territory that China is also claiming amid their growing economic and political clout. At the ASEAN-China Summit, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said they are aiming to develop the COC in 3 years. Earlier, President Duterte has expressed his determination to quickly finalize the COC.
Well, I'm the country coordinator for ASEAN-China. I will try my best because when you claim an ocean, the whole of it, then that is a new development in today's world. So in a sense, it would also change, radical changes in the laws governing international waters, but particularly the right of free passage or the right of innocent passage.
Duterte said he has grown lukewarm on the matter of conducting military drills in the area.
China is already in possession. It's now in their hands. So why do you have to create frictions, strong military activity that will prompt a response from China? I do not mind everybody going to war, except that the Philippines is just beside those islands.
Thank you.
And if there's a shooting there, my country will be the first to suffer. That is my only national interest there, nothing else.
However, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. said the Philippines is not surrendering its claims to China in the South China Sea.
Not an inch, nor an iota of sovereignty.
Locsin also dismissed criticisms that point to the country's lack of assertiveness in fighting for its claim. At the ASEAN-US Summit, America fired a veiled warning against China over its growing dominance.
Like you, we seek an Indo-Pacific in which all nations, large and small, can prosper and thrive, secure in sovereignty, confident in our values, and growing stronger together. We all agree that empire and aggression have no place in the Indo-Pacific.
Meanwhile, President Duterte justified his absence in half of yesterday's meetings, saying he just needed to catch up on sleep.
Still not good enough, but enough to sustain the endurance for the last days. What's wrong with my nap? I don't eat breakfast, and I'm sure you ladies know that. We don't eat breakfast.
Robbie, it's a wrap here for the 33rd ASEAN Summit. The chairmanship has been turned over by Singapore to Thailand, which will now take over the post for a year. President Rodrigo Duterte ended the summit with a bilateral meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Before the meeting, the two leaders talked about their intentions of discussing further cooperation. Prime Minister Abe said that he is intent on discussing further linkages in terms of development as well as economic cooperation with the Philippines. Robbie?
Okay, Bim, just to cover the details of what went on. After the conclusion of the summit, Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong held a press conference. Anything of note in what he said there?
PM Lee largely reiterated his earlier statements in terms of reiterating the importance of cultivating further cooperation in the region. He was also asked about RCEP, or the regional trade deal that is backed by China, which has been pushed towards next year in terms of completion. The media asked him if there was he was in any way frustrated that the finalization of this long sought for deal has been pushed back. Well, he said that certainly it would have been a feather on their cap if RCEP has been sealed under their chairmanship, but he said that he understands the exigencies of forging this trade deal, which covers partnerships between countries that have no existing FTAs or free trade agreements. And he understands the complications of ironing out various kinks in terms of arriving at an enduring conclusion to this trade deal. Robbie?
Okay, that trade deal, again, let's just repeat that trade deal refers to the RCEP, that's the RCEP. That has been pushed to next year, as you said. Nonetheless, were there any significant agreements that were arrived at in this summit?
There are a couple of agreements that have been signed under the stewardship of Singapore. There was the Smart Cities framework that was adopted by the member countries. Before the opening ceremony, economic ministers also sealed an e-commerce framework that aims to foster further collaboration among the region in terms of adopting various ways in terms of maximizing online commerce. This is something that various economies, various territories are now interested in, considering the various what they call unicorns that have been sprouting, or startups that have billion-dollar valuations. PM Lee has also stressed digital technology as something of a challenge for the country. So this comes in the larger context of pursuing and addressing that modern challenge. Of course, the bigger talk of the Code of Conduct over the South China Sea is something that remains work in progress at this point. Robbie?
Okay, let's move beyond ASEAN and this just concluded summit. Malacanang last week did say that Chinese President Xi Jinping will come to Manila for a state visit next week. What's the agenda there, and what's the most that could come from that visit?
Previously, Budget Secretary Bayan Joknero said that they expect about a number of loan agreements to be signed during the visit of Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Of course, we know that China right now is one of the significant partners of the Philippines in terms of pushing for in this infrastructure drive. Although a number of analysts have pointed out a number of times that these China-backed projects remain stalled at this point. So this could be something that would provide momentum to a number of China-backed projects that some say have stalled for quite some time, lacking any substantial progress. Of course, this also comes in the context of the Philippines taking over the role of ASEAN-China coordinator, and also perhaps as President Duterte also earlier said during the summit, he's seeking something by way of direction from China in terms of forging the COC, or the Code of Conduct. So these are possible talking points that we are all looking into during the visit of Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Robbie?
Okay, now after Singapore, President Duterte will now fly straight to Papua New Guinea, this time for the 19th APEC meeting. Trade and security always front and center anytime there's a gathering of Asian leaders. But how will the agenda at the APEC be different from what was discussed at ASEAN?
Yes, that's right, Robbie. Actually, in a few hours, we expect the flight of President Duterte and a number of his cabinet secretaries to head straight out now to Papua New Guinea. Largely the agenda of this APEC summit has been will center on micro and small enterprises, and in terms of further helping facilitate their growth. Actually, the Philippines has quite a number of agricultural linkages with Papua New Guinea, surprisingly. So that could be something of a talking point between the ministers, and establishing further linkages across small enterprises in the region. As we know, Papua New Guinea is a small developing country, so encouraging and nurturing their small enterprises is something that could be crucial as well for their growth. Robbie?
Okay, Bim Santos, thank you very much reporting live from Singapore.